All right. Hi there, everyone. Happy New Year. Sal Maiorana, Happy New Year to you, sir.
Happy New Year, my co-host Adam Benigni. It's been a fun little half season doing this, or a half year, I should say,
Yeah.
on the Bleav network. So I'm glad we got it kicked off, and hoping for bigger and better things in the year 2025 for
Yeah.
us and for everybody out there too.
It goes in. I would put this show in the thumbs up column for 2024. I think it's gone really
Yeah,
well. We appreciate everyone kind of joining a couple of curmudgeons, especially you. We keep it real. And so
well versed curmudgeons.
that's right. And experienced curmudgeons at that.
That's right.
For better or for worse. All right, so off we go as the Bills enter the final week of the regular season. 2 seed already secure. We had talked about this Sunday after the win over the Jets. And, we'll just say the news that came out of Orchard Park on this Wednesday. And the thing that jumps off the injury report is linebacker Terrel Bernard with a quad injury. So it's not rest related or whatever, or keep the starters out of the lineup type situation. And Sean McDermott was kind of, he went from day to day to maybe week to week in his description of that. And that's obviously at the very least a yellow flag, and a significant one at that.
Yeah, I mean, look, all you got to do is think back to last year when Bernard got hurt in the Steelers playoff game and they didn't have him for the Chiefs, and they missed him terribly. I mean, they had to lean on AJ Klein, which that won't be the case this season, but there's still not much depth at that position, Adam. Joe Andreessen, Buffalo Joe, who is obviously a great story locally for us. But, I mean, is Joe Andreessen the guy you want to start a playoff game with? I mean, that's a little bit scary. So that was not good news today. And I guess they're fortunate that this is a game that doesn't matter to them. So it's an easy rest situation for Bernard, not rest, just keep him out of the game. But, boy, you hope it's not going to be like McDermott hinted it could be by week to week, because they're going to need him back for the wild card game, which is – next weekend. What are we talking? 10, 11 days, whatever it's going to be. So that was not great news coming out of one Bills drive today.
I'll just share one story with you. The night of the divisional playoff loss to the Chiefs last year, Vic Carucci and I were doing something for Channel 2 in Buffalo in the pregame. We used the post-game media room right down by the tunnel to record something. And I was walking back up the tunnel as the team was sort of coming out for pregame, and a longtime source that I've known with the organization, it kind of leaned in, and the inactives had come out, and he mentioned to me that Bernard injury, that's tough from a matchup standpoint. They knew going into that game, obviously, how important he was, and though he hasn't had the best season this year, he is a vital piece. He's right in the heart of that defense, Sal, and from a communication standpoint as well as a play execution standpoint.
No, absolutely. He has not had the same impactful season. Last year, all the turnovers he created, I think he had, 3 interceptions and 3 fumbles, whatever it was. It was a lot. He had a great year, and they vitally missed him and that playmaking ability in the playoff game. So this year, it hasn't been quite the same. I think he has 2 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery, 104 tackles, which is fine. But you haven't noticed him quite as much as you did last year. And maybe that was he did have a great year last year. Maybe he overachieved in his first year as a starter, and he kind of settled back into it this year. But regardless, like you said, he's the guy with the green dot on the helmet. He's the one that gets the call from the sideline, that communicates the defense. He has to know what everybody is doing. So he's the quarterback of the defense, essentially. So to not have him in a playoff game would definitely be important. And like I said, Joe Andreessen, great story. I don't know that that's going to work real well if that's the guy that has to wear the green dot in a game. So they need to get Bernard back. And he was wishy-washy today, day to day. He even said if it was a game that we had to play, could he play? I think he said probably to that question, actually, if I recall. I think he did say probably.
Yeah, he kind of indicated to the positive on that side of things.
So I'm hoping that's a good sign that maybe they just rest him this week and get him back. But we'll have to see.
And so that is the luxury you have when you wrap up your seeding with a week to go. to get some vital rest, especially in a guy like Bernard's case, obviously, as others try and get healthy and they get ready for the postseason. It was typically and was again today a walk through in Orchard Park. So hard to read into anything from a practice participation standpoint, and get a better sense of where things stand later on in the week. But of course, a game where you're going to see a lot of subs into the lineup and depth on that on the depth chart on the roster playing in this game, because again, it is relatively meaningless. Going to talk about quarterback Josh Allen, who will play in this game in just a moment. First, a word from the sponsor here. And Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. The largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, NHL, college basketball, and UFC. Head to Bet Online today and don't forget to use the promo code Bleav. That's BLEAV, and get your welcome bonus on your first deposit. All right, Sal, let's pick it up with quarterback Josh Allen. And you had speculated on Sunday that they might put him in the game just to extend his consecutive starts streak. And that is the case, albeit very briefly, as Sean McDermott had described. And I said it to the other night, I don't like it. I would personally have him in like bubble wrap. I wouldn't even have him on the sideline. I'd have him up like next to Brady or something in the box and get a different perspective or use it that way. But the flip side of that is I think Josh Allen, for all he's done and the continued success that he's had and what he's meant to this franchise, and listening him today off the top of his press conference that this is important to him, I think you have to respect that and you have to give him that. And I think that's exactly what the Bills are doing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I told you the other night. I expected this to happen, and that is a cool thing that he started that many games in a row. And it's a shame that it would have to come to an end because they're so good. That doesn't seem really fair. And he's not typically a stat guy. Josh doesn't care about how many yards or, he cares about touchdowns, but doesn't care about stats because he just wants to win games. But this is kind of a cool little personal thing that he has going. And he indicated today he knows that he's probably never catching Brett Favre. Brett Favre started 320 straight games or whatever it was. I don't think Josh is going to make it to that point. I don't think so. So it's a cool little thing that he has going. Get him in there for a series at him and take him out. Now, the interesting thing, though, is if you have him active, then you really can't bring Mike White up because they want to get other guys. You only get 2 practice squad elevations, and they need to use those on positions for other players who aren't going to play in the game. So they can't just bring Mike White up as the backup quarterback in case Trubisky were to get hurt. So, maybe the Bills just kind of milk it a little bit. I don't think this will happen, but I could see them maybe getting 2 series out of Josh Allen, just handing the ball off and staying out of danger to milk some of the clock so Trubisky isn't playing, the whole game. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here because it's a risk. If he were to get hurt in the game, then the only other quarterback's Josh Allen. So he'd have to go into the game.
That was my immediate thought today when I'm listening to McDermott, and he was asked about Mike White for this very reason, and they're not going to elevate him. So, I understand the streak, but, there's the downside of this, which is if Trubisky gets hurt, now it's going to be a watered-down game plan, obviously, and they're going to run the ball to a fault probably, right, and all of those things. But at the same time, it's a risk to consider possible exposure for Allen. And, and I look at I think the news became official today. We knew this, but like Mahomes isn't even going to see the field, right, for Kansas City. And if it weren't for the streak, I think that would be the case with Josh as well. But these are all factors to consider when you make a decision about an individual statistic like this. Again, I think Allen's earned it. I'd probably do the same thing if I was pushed, if he really, pushed for it. But my preference would be to just have him off of the field and not playing at all.
Look, if something crazy were to happen and Trubisky were to get hurt, then what would happen. Josh would go in and literally would hand off every play. They wouldn't even throw the ball. There's no way because they don't care about it. Even though McDermott wants to win the game and the players who are playing obviously want to win the game, they also realize that if they were down to Josh Allen as their emergency quarterback in that situation, he's not dropping back to pass once, and the game would essentially be done at that point. And if the Bills somehow hung on to win, great. But if they lose, no big deal. Again, like you said, this is the benefit of locking up the number 2 seed, not screwing around last week and taking care of business. And they can afford to do this. So I'm not anticipating any trouble in this game. Josh Allen's not going to get hurt. I mean, come on, that's not going to happen. They're not going to put him in danger. So we could probably stop worrying about that.
All right. So, but one more point on this relative to Allen's career with Buffalo and the streak and all of those things. And I think we've talked about how the fact that they've done a much better job of, Josh, to his credit, especially, has done a much better job of sort of managing the number of hits that he's taken this year. I think, and it has to do with Joe Brady and how the offense is built and is functioning and all of those things. But Allen's near the top of that list. He makes the wow plays, obviously, throws on the Superman cape and has done that. But by and large, the wear and tear has been decreased this season. And it just, looking at his entire career now, because that wasn't always the case, for the balance of it, he's really kind of put himself in harm's way to a fault on more than a few occasions. Right. And I think it just speaks to his durability. I mean, you stop and consider how tough this kid is, the hits he's taken, how well his body is held up, and the level he continues to perform at. I think it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. He is a tank. I mean, the guy is almost indestructible, it seems like. So, he has done some crazy things, Adam. We know that this is the way he plays, but I think you're right. I think he has managed it much better than he has in the past. We've seen him slide. We've seen him go out of bounds. He's not leaping over guys anymore. I mean, I can't even recall. I'm sure it happened at some point this year, but I really can't recall too many times where he got, absolutely, crazy and was jumping over dudes. So I think he's realizing that part of his career should be past. Stop doing that stuff, right? I mean, stop doing the crazy stuff. And he's done a good job of that this year.
Yeah, I think it's a credit to Josh and the organization, too, for the way they've transitioned from Stephon Diggs. This was part of it. Because I know internally, there was some conflict on this issue. There was a lot of concern about Josh and his style of play. And we heard repeatedly, well, you don't want to coach that out of him or that sort of a thing. And that's what makes him great and all those. But there was, Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, and they addressed it. Terry Pagula. They needed to resolve this issue. And I think to the extent you can, and what they've built offensively now this season, I think they've done a terrific job kind of all the way around of mitigating the risk associated with it. All right. Let's just briefly touch on the defense. And I did hear Sean talk about it today, and it was kind of a get-right game, albeit against the Jets, right? And that disaster of a football team. Yep. And Aaron Rodgers, the state of his game is right now. And there have been signs, right? We had talked about in the Detroit game, through the better part of 3 quarters, that defense did a really good job, especially in terms of taking away the run. So there have been positive signs, and Sunday's win over the Jets certainly adds to that list. Yeah, we had talked about the Bernard injury and that sort of, what that adds another layer potentially. But beyond that, they've done little to really ease my state of concern on what's happening on that side of the ball, I guess, and how vulnerable I think they are as they head toward the postseason now.
Yeah, I thought last week was a good step in the right direction. The Jets have some good players, Adam. Rodgers wasn't great. I understand that. But Garrett Wilson's a terrific receiver. Devontae Adams, we know, is fantastic. Breece Hall has given these guys trouble. So they've got talented players, and really the Bills did a very nice job. They shut them out for 3 quarters. It wasn't until Tyrod Taylor came into garbage time and the Bills were playing their backups that the Jets scored. So he's right. McDermott's right that it was a step in the right direction. I'm with you, though. I am not convinced, and no matter what happens, I'm not even going to pay attention to what happens this week, but I'm not convinced that this defense, if push came to shove, and there was a day where Allen and the offense were just mediocre, similar to like the New England game 2 weeks ago. They were mediocre in that game. If they had been playing a better team, the Bills would have lost the game. Well, they're going to be playing better teams in the playoffs. And if the offense is having a tough day, that's going to be a problem, because I'm not sure this defense is capable of going out and winning a game against a playoff team. So that's going to be something to watch for. Their opponent in this first round, which we're going to get to, I'm sure, in a second here, It's going to matter depending on who it is, because there are two teams on that list that can play pretty good offense. And then, of course, the Broncos are very good on defense. So it's going to matter that this defense has to play well in the postseason.
All right, so let's get to that right now. That was the last topic I had, and I thought you did a terrific job. If you haven't read it, Sal's one of your most recent articles, I think your second most recent article in the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, kind of breaks down these three potential opponents, the likelihood that the Bills wind up facing them, and the challenges that each of them present. So it's a really good read, and let's just kind of get to a little bit of that right now in sort of some broad strokes. So we'll go in order of likelihood. Denver Broncos would be the most likely, because if they beat a resting Kansas City team, they are coming to Buffalo. And, defensively, that's a really good football team. But then you have a rookie in Bo Nix at quarterback who's shown a lot of positive signs and progress. But again, it's a rookie, first playoff game on the road in Buffalo, where they're unbeaten this year, going against Josh Allen on the opposite side. I mean, I think, advantage Buffalo there, but it's a defense they would have to contend with, and I think it presents some challenges.
Yeah, I mean, McDermott's got a great track record of going against rookie quarterbacks, and you just painted the picture perfectly. I mean, coming into Orchard Park in January for a playoff game, that's a hell of a test for any quarterback, let alone a rookie. And, Nix he started off pretty terribly. I mean, they were making jokes about him in his first 6 or 7 games. And then the last 9, he's actually played decently. He's one of the reasons why they're in position to get a playoff berth. So he's done pretty well. He's got, Cortland Sutton's terrific, but they don't have enough on offense, certainly, to go toe-to-toe with the Bills. It would have to be their defense that has a great, great day. And I will remind people that a lot of those guys on defense were here last November, and they beat the Bills in that ridiculous game where the Bills should have won. But, hey, Denver won because their defense was fantastic. So it's a problem. Patrick Surtain's the best cornerback in football. And their pass rush, you saw what they did to Burrow in that game. They sacked him, I think it was 6 times. Now, I know he's not Josh Allen with the escapability, but they've got a good pass rush. It's a very good defense. So I think that would be a challenging game for the Bills, but the rookie quarterback factor would definitely give the Bills an edge in the game.
No question about it. But if that, and the Bills have done a good job in Allen protecting the football this year, but that's a defense that is opportunistic. They could create some turnovers based on that. And you know how playoff games go. That defensive side is an obvious area of concern. Next up would be the Miami Dolphins, and we don't have to go through all the scenarios, but they would be second most likely based on the percentages. And initially, you hear that, and you're like, Bills have owned them or whatever. And they certainly did in week 2, 31-10. But then week 9, 30-27, and it takes a 61-yard field goal from Tyler Bass, right, with 5 seconds left to knock them off and complete the regular season sweep. And, oh, by the way, you have a division team. You'd play them for the 3rd time this year. Anyone will tell you. I mean, division games, we hear this repeatedly and see it play out on the field. They're tough enough, let alone when you have to face them 3 times. Now, they've done this recently against Miami, but that's not something to just overlook. I mean, I like them at home against the Dolphins, but there's a lot of familiarity, and I think it would be a very competitive situation there.
Yeah, I think any NFL team will tell you they don't want to see a division opponent in the playoffs. They've already seen them twice. The teams know each other so well, and I think that plays against the better team, right? I mean, that gives the team, the inferior team, that gives them a little bit more to pin their hopes on because they know the opponent so well. So I think it's, look, do I think the Bills are better and they should win the game? Of course I do.
Sure.
But the law of averages, Adam, at some point, Allen's 13-2 against the Dolphins. At some point, something crazy is going to happen. And there's been a couple of games where the Bills could have lost and they didn't because they pulled it out. Like we just said, the game earlier in November was one of those games. I just don't like it. I don't like having to see the Dolphins. You put them to bed in November. They were 2-6 at the time. You didn't have to worry about facing them anymore. And I don't think the Bills would really want to play them again. It would just be a little bit more dangerous to me than playing a team like Denver and even the team we're going to talk about here at the end, Cincinnati. Yeah. Avoid the Dolphins. Again, do I feel like they could beat them? Yeah, I do. But I don't want to roll the dice beating a team for a third. We saw what happened in 22, Adam. They came in here with Skylar Thompson and almost beat the Bills.
Right.
So, I mean, anything can happen in playoff
games. That's what I referenced. Yes.
Crazy stuff. So stay away from them.
Okay, so the Bengals would be the other one.
Yes.
And I think we agree.
Stay away from them, too.
Yeah. I mean, so they're super vulnerable on defense, right? I mean, that has the potential to be like a shootout type game. Problem is for Buffalo, I mean, Bengals have won, 4 straight, right?
Yeah.
And that quarterback, Joe Burrow, and those receivers, I mean, we've seen this movie before in the matchup. They are a very difficult matchup for the Buffalo Bills and for many others. The precision, the timing of that offense, that quarterback, how good he is, they can just pick you apart and move the ball, as we've seen them do against the Bills in the past. And I just feel like, I think that's a high-scoring game. I like Buffalo at home, but you do not want a Joe Burrow. You don't want to mess with that and by any stretch of the imagination with what they and that quarterback bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, this to me is the team you don't want to see. And I honestly cannot believe, the Dolphins too. I can't believe these two teams are still in it here at the end of the year, but here we are. So obviously the Bengals have the least, the toughest path here, because if the Broncos win, it's over. If the Broncos lose and Miami wins, and they're playing the Jets, for crying out loud, so I would think they're going to go beat the Jets. If Miami wins, the Bengals aren't in. So it's going to be tough for Cincinnati to make it, but crazier things have happened, as we know. And I do not want to see Joe Burrow. He, for whatever reason, sort of has Buffalo's number. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mike Gesicki all of a sudden is resurgent, 6'6" tight end. I don't know about Chase Brown, the running back. He got hurt last week, but he was 10 yards shy of 1,000 when he got hurt. They've got a hell of a good offense. You could easily see a 42-40 game, because their defense has been vulnerable all year, and Buffalo's has too at times. But I don't know. Do you want to go point for point with the Bengals in a playoff game? I would like to avoid that at all costs. I've been saying this for months, Adam. You do not want to see the Bengals anywhere, anytime, because like the Ravens, for whatever reason, that team just is a bad matchup for the Bills. I would argue that they might be the two worst matchups in the AFC for the Bills, the Bengals and the Ravens, for whatever reasons. Well, we just went over some of the reasons.
Yeah,
I don't want to see either of those teams. Let alone, you don't want to see them twice. You don't want to have to beat the Bengals and then probably play the Ravens.
Think about how effective Burrow was a couple of years back in that divisional playoff game in Buffalo in bad weather, right? Yeah. And how they executed offensively. I mean, that's just it. Ball is out quick, super accurate, on time, rhythm, all those things. I mean, they have the ability to exploit whatever shortcoming you've got on the defensive side of the ball. And we know the Bills have more than a few there. So, all right. So that's an initial look. We will know obviously much more when we'll do our live post game. I think you're going to be over in Foxborough, right? You are going to make the trip.
Yep.
So, and at whatever point, we have an opponent, I think we're going to dive in deep on that. So that's just kind of a cursory look right now. So having said that, Sal, have a safe trip. Is that a flight or a drive for you?
No, I drive. It's only about 5 hours for me from where I live over here.
Yeah. So
assuming the weather's good. So it's supposed to be snowing in Syracuse. So we'll see.
You get to avoid the airport. And by the time you get to the airport, fly, take off, Uber or rent a car or whatever, get to your hotel, you're better off just making, from a Rochester standpoint, especially making that drive down to southeastern Mass. All right, Sal, again, Happy New Year.
You
appreciate it. Sal Maiorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. I'm Adam Benigni, WGRZ TV and Sports Talk Live. Buffalo, we're back with you Friday ahead of the regular season finale against the New England Patriots. In the meantime, thanks for being with us here on Bleav in Bills, and Happy New Year, everyone.